I grew up in Brooklyn. I grew up in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. And if you go to Bed-Stuy now, like many American neighborhoods, it's being gentrified. It's very nice now. you know?
Uh-huh.
Like Bed-Stuy is the cool place to be. Brooklyn is the cool place to be. Even, I was watching a TV show. There's somebody said, "I'm from Brooklyn, New York." And I was like, no one's never been proud to be from Brooklyn, New York in that way. But when I was growing up, so I was born in '77, and so young guy, right? And my coming of age is the late '80s, early like the '90s, and that was the height of the crack epidemic. And I remember going through the neighborhoods and seeing people, not looking great, right? Seeing crack vials in the streets, drug dealers, gang members, the whole nine. And you had to navigate life every day because
Mm-hmm.
the streets were tough.
Mm-hmm.
And your parents worried about you all the time. And, again, now as a 42-year-old parent, I understand now. Then I did not understand what my parents always feared about, don't go to this park, don't go to that area, don't walk this block, don't do this. And, you know, I navigated life. I'm here, but there were neighborhoods I walked in where I had to run out of. There were blocks I walked down where I got beat up. I got things stolen from me. There were times when, you come home and you ask about something, and my mom gets so angry. You're like, I, I just want to know what this little plastic thing with the red vial was. Saying you get a hit across your face like that you ever
Uh-huh.
looking at it. This I was like, whoa, like what did I do, right? Um, the young people I work with, I tell them sometimes, my poverty, I ain't gonna say it looked different from theirs, but New York is a different place. But my poverty included mice, included roaches, rats, and there's just dilapidated buildings and just just not happiness. It was kind of in some way it feels like it was glum, and then there's that interesting part about life where, but that's my life. That's what made me, and I have many memories, happy memories.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my family's lived in the projects.
Uh-huh.
I love going to the projects, because that's where I learned how to dance in the projects. That's where I met the first girlfriend I kissed in the projects. So that's like all those different things. And you,
It's like it's the only story you've got. It's like you don't have another story, so you might as well find all the value and richness in it that you can, right?
right,
Yeah.
and it's my life. And a mentor of mine said something a long time ago. We was in an area doing a talent show. Get to that. And at this talent show, there was a lot of gang members. You can tell because it was, we knew we was in a gang area. Bloods, Crips, there's a lot of Bloods, and they all have this talent show. And people are like, "It's going to be crazy here." And she was like, "Why is it going to be crazy? They got family members too. They're families."
Right.
It's like, "Oh yeah," but
Yeah.
sometimes in that environment, sometimes what you can see is a gang member, but at the talent show, they were there to support their family.
Right.
And once we related to them as that, they all got along. They was like, yeah, man, we just here to have fun. It's like, cool. And
Uh-huh.
nothing happened. It was like one of the only incidents that day that nothing ever happened in the neighborhood.
Mm.
People were flabbergasted, but I'm jumping. But that was my upbringing. And, if you can see a little bit, I got albums here. I loved music. My cousin was a DJ. My other cousin was a dancer. And I fell in love with sound and music. My mother had a bunch of 45s and things like I couldn't touch,
Right.
but
Don't touch them. Yeah.
touch it, but the
Yeah.
music was great. So that's a little bit about my upbringing. You know,
So the tell us about the moment in which you determined that dance was, or was there a moment when you determined dance was going to be the thing that altered or changed the direction you were headed towards.
Thank you for keeping me on track. That's the interesting part, right? And I know I'm talking to a pastor here, but someone told me it was divine intervention because I did not have a plan. So I often tell the story. I did a TED talk and I was kind of talking to this. I went to an all-black elementary school, and teachers there, everybody said you were smart, you were in the top classes. I got very good grades. My mother was always on me to get good grades, and when you got these good grades, I got applauded, or praised. Then I took these tests, these tests that determine your smartness and what schools you go to, and if we're in the top class, we should be automatically going to these top schools.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't test in. And actually a number of my friends in the class tested in. Probably less than 1% of us tested into this program called Prep for Prep or these other top schools, Bronx Science, Brooklyn Tech, and so forth. And, I never really thought about it, then, but I was like, I'm not that smart.
Yeah.
So we all went to a junior high school, all-black high school, where we were the top in that junior high school in a specialized program where we did 7th and 8th grade in the same year. So I skipped 8th grade basically. And you're told you're smart, you're told whatever. And then I go to 9th grade. I go to 10th grade, and I'm in an all-white school now.
Mm.
In the middle of Brooklyn, in an area called Midwood. It sits across the street from a college. And for the first time in my life, I'm around white people.
This is in 10th grade.
Yeah.
Okay.
And by the way, I was only 12 years old.
Yeah.
So because I started school early, skipped 8th grade, so I'm only 12 years old. In 10th grade, in this magnet high school, in an all-white neighborhood I've never knew existed until I had to go to the school.
Wow.
And there were things happening. Now I get it. Now it's like, oh, that's nothing. But, we never went on class trips the way this school did. So for 10th grade, we went away on a bus.
Right. You didn't go to the zoo.
Right.
You packed a bag. Yeah.
Right. We were away for five days, and I went ice skating.
Right. Never been ice skating before. Yeah.
The sports team played lacrosse. I never was like, what is this stick thing that, and the kids kept talking about things that I just never heard of before,
right.
And so you can probably tell I'm not shy, but I shied away. I failed every class in 10th grade.
Wow.
And at that moment, and again, the area was across the street from a college, so I was seeing college kids that I'd never seen college kids before.
Mm-hmm.
I remember one time running for the bus and bumped into a woman by accident, and a police officer threw me against the wall. I was like, "You better watch where you're going." And this fear of like, okay, I'm in a strange place. If this happened in my neighborhood, at least I know how to navigate it because I know what they're looking for.
Right.
Here, I was just running for the bus, so I didn't know like what's going on, right? Mm-hmm. And I shut down. I failed 10th grade, and I said to myself, well, I live in a neighborhood where my friends are drug dealers and gang members, and none of them went to school. I'm going to hang out with these guys, saying my boy Kareem has a BMW. He's 19 years old. Let me see what Kareem is doing. Right. My other friend, Amin, said he always had the nice clothes and people loved him. Let me see what Amin is doing. Kareem was in a gang called the Decepticons. My friend Philip was in the other side of the gang of Decepticons. This is who I hung out with. I played basketball with, football with. So really, Amos, I wasn't looking for dancing. I was looking to be a part of something. I now know that. I was just looking to be along because I stopped receiving those applause from. Yeah. I was that kid that made it, and then I wasn't anymore. The teachers treated me differently. You know, the one of the teachers told my mom they thought I was on drugs because I kept failing classes. And I was the only black boy in my class. So I was like, you know, I'll put this aside. I'm going to go do what my friends do. And here's the divine intervention, right? None of them said yes. Now, these are all my friends.
Right.
I hang out with them every day, every weekend, whatever like that. And they're like, we live on the same block. I see you every day. I eat at your house. And I'm like, I'm going to join your gang. No, you're not. I'm going to sell some drugs. No, you're not. You know?
What was the reason they gave you for saying no?
You know, to this day, I still don't know.
Yeah.
No, that's part of the memory I don't have. It was just kind of like, everybody just was real dodgy around it. Like, nah, you know, I'm like, I know the rituals. And back then, to join a gang, you had to get jumped in.
Right.
That meant, you know, for those who don't know, you got to go to a park sometime late at night, stand around 7, 8 big dudes, pledge your loyalty to this gang, and then you got to fight every single one of them at one time. It's not pretty.
No.
And I kept looking for it. I was looking for it. And it's like, we won't let you know when it is. We won't tell you where it is. And it just happened that around this same summer, you know, after I failed 10th grade, and I'm looking for this, my mother is trying to actively get me out of that school and get me back to a place where I can thrive. And my cousins started dancing. And they went to a show here, they went to a show here, and my mother would take me to the shows, and it trapped me. The excitement trapped me. I don't even tell you why, you know what I'm saying? Maybe it was, you know, I always joke, maybe it was girls and I'm a young man. I'm like, there's a lot of beautiful girls here, you know? Maybe it's the music, you know, my cousin's a DJ, he's up there looking cool. And I think that's kind of what it was. The way that people reacted to them was the same way that people reacted to the gang and the drug members in some areas, but also was the same thing that I got when I was getting 90s and 99s in school. And I was like, I want to be around just that accepted. So anybody who said yes to me, I would have been around. So luckily, my cousin said yes, be part of the group. And I wasn't even a dancer yet. I was the guy who carried their costumes.
Right.
You know,
you're willing to do anything.
Anything.
Right.
And it just happened to be because I carried their costumes and I go to rehearsals and my cousin was the DJ. I got a hold of the music. I practiced at home. And one day I was like, I know your dance moves. And they said, be a part of the group.
Yeah.
And literally I never looked back.
Mm-hmm.
That changed my life.
Yeah.
Forever.
Yeah. It's an invitation into a community or group, you know. It's when you're accepted, it powerful and transformative things happen. Like it feels like even on a cellular level, like within you, things change, you know, when you feel connected, and it works in the other direction as well. When you're rejected, you know, from a community, or you're in the midst of one that you don't feel like you belong to, or is unwilling to accept who you are,
right?
Power changes happen within you. You know, it's like almost on a cellular level where transformations have, things break down, they stop working. You can't study, you can't, you know, listen in class, you can't get your words out.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
I love Shakespeare, and you know, I can't forget this story. And you know, I'll be honest, I'm looking at my books over here if I have one. I wanna forget this story. I do, but it's a pain that I just never gotten over. Remembering I'm in English class, and again, like you said, I was just shut down. Like the environment shut me down, and I wish I could go back to my former self and teach him what I know now, right? But I didn't thrive in that area, and I'm sitting in English class, and the teacher, she was a white teacher. Most of the teachers in Brooklyn back then were white. And she's handing out books. And she's like, you know, we have some used ones and some new ones. We're going to hand them out randomly. You know, Shakespeare, Taming of the Shrew. Actually, one of my favorite plays of Shakespeare, right? watched the movie a couple of times, read the book a couple of times, and she was handing them out. And when it got to me, I was lucky enough to get a brand new book. Brand new. And she looked at me and said, Mr. Joyce, you probably will not read this.
Oh, man.
She took the book back, went to the bottom of a pile where the book had the first 3 pages ripped off, the cover was ripped off front and back, and handed it on my desk and continued on. And it probably, that instant probably was less than 10 seconds of my life, but it has affected me all my life.
Right. 30 years later, you're still telling the story.
Yeah.
And we all got one, right? I think about for me, it's first grade. And, I'm 6 years old, been here in the US for about 3 years. And this was second grade, 7 years old. Been here for 4 years. And I spoke 3 languages at that point. I was speaking 2 Ethiopian languages and then English. And no problems up to this point. Get in there. I'll never forget the teacher who told me. She looked at me and then she looked at my name, asked me where I was from, and she says, "Okay, you need to go to the ESL classes, English as a second language." Without any test or any, just like by looking at what I look like, and automatically got us. So I spent a year doing English as a second language.
You probably spoke English better than those of us born here.
I don't know. I have no idea. I don't ever I didn't have any problems up to that point, but yeah. Let's talk about All Stars Project, because it's you just told the story about your entry into sort of the group dance community there around you, and you've been doing it ever since. Tell us what you do with All Stars Project now.
Yeah. So the All Stars Project, we're 40 years old. So I joined that story I talked about joining the dance group was around 1991, 92 is when I met the All Stars. When my cousins met the All Stars, I was just tagging along.
Yeah.
I always have to qualify that, because one of my cousins will always joshes me and says, "No, we met them."
Uh-huh. Right.
That's to remind me.
Yeah.
But so the All Stars Project is, now, it's a national nonprofit that helps young people grow and develop through performance. And when we talk about performance, we're talking about, again, talent shows on stage, singing, dancing, rapping, but also performing in, as the usher, performing as the box office, performing as the tech manager, as the MC. We give young people the power to see themselves as producers of every aspect of the show, because that, again, that's powerful, being a part of something and saying, I help create this thing. And then we invite the audience to be performers as well. Perform everything up there, no matter if it's your child or not. Perform, appreciation, right? We go to a theater and we know to applaud, whether we liked it or not. But we know the performance of being at a play. But then when we talked about young people in poor communities, we they got to be good, or we don't applaud. Well, that's what our young people want, they need. So I produce those events as part of the All Stars Project. We have another program, Development School for Youth, where young people are learning how to perform in the corporate environment as a way, not for them to be in corporate America. It'd be great if they do, but as a way to learn how the world works. Because for many of our young people, myself included then, so I don't know if you can see it, it's just that's my view of Dallas, right?
Yeah.
Right. That's many of our young people sit in neighborhoods where they see these buildings every day. And I remember when I first came here to Dallas and I asked the young people at South Oak Cliff High School, Pinkston High School, Kimball High School, have you ever been inside one of those buildings? And it's like, no. Have your parents been inside any of these buildings? No. I've been here all but 6 months, and I was like, I've been in 20 of those buildings already. Right. I have, I know people in those buildings, and we're inviting you to be into those buildings and learn what they do, what happens inside these tall buildings. You literally see every day.
Yeah.
And in some ways, those buildings shape your life.
Mm-hmm.
And in the buildings around them, the city government buildings, the arts, but you have no connection to them. And fast forward today, you know, I got young people now who I'll be on a bus somewhere with them, like coming from a theater show, and they'd be like, "Oh yeah, does Hank still work at EY?" You know, so they just pass the building.
They say
like,
EY. They say EY now.
Yeah, exactly. You know, like
Yeah.
You know, or two kids. I found this cute, but two kids is like, "All right, we're leaving now. We would actually buy the church." They was like, "Where y'all going?" "Oh, we're gonna take the trolley. We're gonna just hang around Cloud Warren." And so, I'm like,
Yeah.
Oh, that's what we do now.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So,
Yeah.
You know, and interesting enough, you know, it's kind of a haphazard thing. I mean, not haphazard, but you know, the protests recently. So I just moved. So I bought my first home. I think I told you that before. But I lived on Field Street, right next to the Perot Museum before I moved here. And up until the protest, I'd never seen young people downtown or in that area, except for Deep Ellum and so forth, right?
Yeah.
Now when you drive around there, you may see kids on scooters driving around. And it's kind of like, because they discovered the protest helped these young people discover there's another place to go.
Yeah.
It's kind of mind-boggling.
It is. Yeah. It's and you wonder why they didn't go beforehand.
Because no one invited them.
Yep. Or did they not feel like they were allowed to be there? You know,
Exactly.
were there certain streets and certain areas, regions, parts of town where you just weren't allowed to be, no matter what, you know. I live downtown, you know, so I know exactly what you're talking about. I see it now, you know, there's people on scooters and bikes and walking around there. It feels like it's got the feel of a bigger city in a big city that where you see strangers that are, not strangers, I should say, people that are just there to feel like the bigness of Dallas. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're just there to walk around and sort of sense, the size of the city, and so it's been fun to see that happen as I've walked back and forth to the church. But
and so that's what I do is I help connect young people to opportunity through performance. So they learn the performance of business, how to shake hands, how to have conversations about business in these buildings. We place them in paid summer internships, and they get to navigate this new life, right?
Yeah.
You know, like they go, "Mr. Antoine, you know, they took me to this restaurant. I didn't know what, like there was 3 forks."
Yeah.
Like, so what did you eat with?
Yeah.
You know, so that's a little bit of what we do. Is
right. Right. It's intimidating, you know, the environment, like the restaurant story you were just telling. I mean, it is, I didn't eat my first, my first shrimp, right? Shrimp cocktail. All right. Cause, you know, I mean, shrimp, I always thought you just you fried it, right? That's all you do with shrimp is you fry it. I didn't eat my first shrimp until I was a sophomore in college. And I was at a buddy's house, a friend's house, and they were about to have a reception in their home. And it's one of my friends from college. It was on some sort of break we were on. I'd gone home with him. They had this big mound of like shrimp on ice sitting in a bowl, you know, and it was just boiled shrimp. And then they had a big, you know, a smaller bowl with red sauce in it. And and he's like, "Go ahead, you know, have one." You know, there's just plenty of them there. And I'm like, this is before the party started. I tried to act like I knew what to do with it, because you had to peel it a little. You got to peel the shrimp a little bit, you know, and then set the peel aside. Then you dip it in the red sauce. But I didn't know that you could peel it, you know. So I was just like, do they eat it whole? Am I supposed to just go at it with the shell and everything? So he gave me a plate with like 3 of them on there. I didn't know what to do. So I just left them on there. And then it wasn't until later he said, "Amos, why did you eat the shrimp?" I don't know how to. And he looked at me, and this is one of my white friends, and he looked at me, and he was so surprised, like, what do you mean you don't know how to eat shrimp cocktail? I don't know what I mean. I just mean I actually don't know. I've never encountered this strange delicacy. Now I love it now. I mean, if shrimp cocktail is fantastic, you know.
Yep.
Yeah.
I thank you for sharing that story, because I mean, that I've had many of those experiences, and when I see young people today having those experiences, I try to be that person to encourage them to try something new, because I sometimes look back now and go, oh my God, like there's some things that's so simple that I take for granted now, but at one point I was not introduced to those simple delicacies as you put it out, you know. Right. And the young people, I remember you probably heard of by now. Oh my God, I am going to forget the name. There's a group here that takes young men and women who had some legal issues and so forth, and they then work in a restaurant and serve.
Cafe Momentum.
Thank you. Yeah. I don't know why I'm blanking on the name. Right. So I'm at an event, and the young man is serving me this dish, and I forgot what it was. And I was like, "Have you tried it?" You know, it was so good.
Right.
And he's like, kids, I don't like that stuff. So I'm like, so I want to call you on your, like, what you mean you don't like it? Have you tasted it before? Right. He goes, no. And part of the thing that I heard in your story that we also work with young people on is that I appreciate this young man doing is it's bravery to actually say, I don't know.
Right.
Because many times, I felt this, you feel stupid, like, why don't I know?
Yeah.
Why don't I know what happens in that building? And when that person says something to me, like when I was again in that classroom, I did not know what these kids were doing with this stick and this ball and a little net. So that's part of why I shut down, because I'm like, why don't I know what they're doing? And I don't have the bravery at the time to ask, because I don't want to get laughed at. I don't want to be bullied. I don't want to be whatever. Like, you don't know lacrosse? You don't know shrimp? Mm-hmm. So I challenged the kid, luckily we were one-on-one. I just said, hey, look, man, if you can, when you go back and you get the next batch, taste one before you bring it out and see what you think. And by the end of the party, he came up to me and just said, thank you. It was really good. I actually like this. And I just, I never seen that young man again, but I'm like, hopefully that's one experience that he can take with him to just try something new, because we're so afraid to try new things and it holds us back. But that's what poverty is. Again, when I think about the world today, we can talk about COVID and elections and all that stuff, but poverty is that thing that I've been fighting against for so long, because it takes away chances. It makes people feel stupid. And the world has told poor people, you're stupid. You're not wanted. You don't belong here. And I felt that. And I hate that feeling. So regardless of the fancy things that my programs really do, what I'm really doing is trying to teach young people that poverty doesn't have to stifle your opportunities, your goals. You can have shrimp.
You can have shrimp. Yeah. Attempting to keep just keep the light on, right? At this point, it's like being poor can just quench your spirit, and impose ceilings like right above your head, and it just feels like you're walking through life constantly crouching, and it's and it's just like you can't fully stand up and stretch your body out.
Right.
That's what it feels like physically to me, when we were living through that season of years and years, my family, but that's what poverty felt like. But that's what I and looking back on it, that's what I remember. In the moment, it was just life. It was like, oh yeah, Mama's so smart for saving all the Smucker's jelly jars so that we can put something else in there later on. But so what about your mentors and your partners in the tall buildings? Now, do they also take risks and chances and have to practice being brave and courageous in the same way that your mentees do?
Yes. Hey, Buddy Jordan, Buddy, he said he had a question. Said,
Yeah.
what's the makeup of the minorities in the All-Stars? 100%. Buddy's a good friend. Thank you, Buddy. So yeah, we work with, majority African American and Latinx young people. So and that's purposeful, and maybe it's 99.9% depending on the time, because when I went to Kimball High School, we met one white young woman, Autumn, and Autumn was great.
Yeah.
But yeah, our supporters. So full disclosure, one of your members, Hunter Hunt, actually a few of your members, Buddy is a supporter of us as well.
Yeah.
But Hunter met us in New York now 25, 26 years ago, has been a generous giver and the reason why we are here in Dallas. And he always talks about the risk and the things he learned, right? Some of those things were that, I'll just say poor kids didn't need a white savior, and I'm saying that's purposefully kind of to push the envelope on this conversation just a little bit, so what we mean by that is sometimes, people look at the poor and look at young African-American and Latinx Hispanic young people and say, I know what's best. Let me just save them from. And the fact is you can't save me from the neighborhood. You can't, I still got to go, the young people still got to go back to that neighborhood. Still got to navigate that life. Their mother still got to save the jars, right? We still got to figure out which bills to pay. Is the lights this week or is going to be food this week? Okay, we're going to make those sacrifices. What Hunter learned was he has an immense, and again, Hunter's Hunter. But everyone, saying there's some privilege that he and others have. There's some things about the world that he and others have. And what he can do is teach people like me what that is. And just give me the choices to act on. And that's what they done, So when we do the paid summer internships with our Development School for Youth program, people will ask, well, do your young people have any skills? And I'm like, no. They go to South Oak Cliff High School.
Right.
They're barely graduating from that high school. So, I'm putting them I'm putting them at a Hunt Corp,
right.
EY, KPMG to do what? You want them to do a spreadsheet? They've never heard the word, right? They've learned some Excel and some Word in school, but they don't know how to put a spreadsheet together. You're going to teach them that. And the purpose of it really isn't about the spreadsheet. The purpose of it is that the young people talk about the most is the first day they went to HR, and HR gave them a badge with their face on it. And they took a 2-hour bus ride, got to their company, put the badge in the thing, and the thing opened up. Yeah. And it was like, I'm welcomed here. Like, I work here. I have a desk. I have a monitor. People ask me things. And then my supervisor took me out to, again, a fancy restaurant. And I got to eat some fancy food that I never ate before, listen to conversation. And I start to learn some things. And I start to say to myself, I want more. I want more for myself. So now I can have a conversation about how to get it.
How do you do do you have to do like cross-cultural training? Do you have to train your mentees to be able to kind of enter into those kinds of relationships without, without it being too difficult for them?
No, we do and the first thing is, just to play with some words, we don't call them mentors.
Okay. What do you call them?
We call them development coaches.
Okay. I like that. Yeah.
The mentorship has, one way connotation,
right.
Older, younger, I know more than you, in my way. And it's a dual relationship. It's a give and take. The young people are going to teach you some things too. But what we do a training on what's poverty and I pause to say how to work with young people who are poor, because it's not really that, but it's more of a conversation around what is development.
Uh-huh.
Again, how do you help people see opportunity? And then also how you do not take care of them. Again,
Mm-hmm.
you can't save them. How do you put demands on young people? Because so we ask the young people in the program, what do you want? And they say, I want to be able to talk in public. I want to learn about business. They want to be held accountable. So when they get to your office, I don't want you to let them off the hook. You have to put demands on them and teach them how the world works. Teach them that there is consequences.
Right.
So there is a costume for corporate America,
Mm-hmm.
right? It just is. One day we'll change it maybe, but there's a costume. So you have to learn how to dress to be on that stage.
Uh-huh.
Again, performance.
Yeah.
There's a way to there's a performance to do with your supervisor about your work. I don't understand the work, or I'm done with my work. Do you have any more work for me? How to interact with colleagues, just how to be in the world, right? And realizing that these young people, again, lived in these neighborhoods 16, 17, 18 years old and never been down there, never been in your building. So why would they know? How would they know to peel the shrimp? Right?
Oh, yeah.
So
It's
that's
yeah, it's I mean, fascinating, because it's like you're teaching them maybe how to ask or to say what they want, which is doesn't, when you're poor, it's difficult to actually believe that someone would want to know what it is that you want.
right.
It's like going to the doctor. There's a way that, when my wife is white. She's from West Virginia, and one of the first things I noticed after we got married was, we went to the doctors, and especially when she was pregnant with my son Abraham. First time I'm in the doctor's office with her at the same time, and just the way she talked to the doctor and asked the doctor questions and said what she wanted to the doctor was natural for her in a way that I was like, I didn't know we could ask. Can you actually ask for that? Will they actually do? And he talked to her. He wasn't offended at all by the fact that she was asking, stating her case, saying that. So it's, she would never be able to remember the moment at which her parents sat her down, and said, this is how you talk to a doctor and let the doctor know that this is what you want or need out of life, or out of their attention. But it just came naturally for me to this day. I mean, I do not, I go to the doctor's and they say something. I'm like, maybe not. I should ask him. I'm like, no, who am I to really ask the doctor? Who am I?
Right. And some of that, and I'm not a expert in these things, right? But about what I'm about to say, but it's very much, I say cultural, and again, I'm not trying to use the blame game or the victim game. I don't like to play the victim thing, right? But I imagine the story of your wife and her family. And again, we're talking about performance, right? So we took some of our performance language from a Russian philosopher and scientist, Lev Vygotsky, who studied how children play,
Right. Mm-hmm.
how children learn. He studied family units and created this term called zone of proximal development. He said that the children, they imitate their parents.
Right.
They learn from the family. And we also too learn from the children, but a lot of times, we relate to children a head taller, right? So when a baby is talking and babbling, you don't say, hey, baby, stop babbling, have a conversation, use your words, right? We have conversation with the baby babbling. Goo goo gaga, you want your bottle? Goo goo gaga, oh, I had a nice day too. How was your day? Blah, 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 right? So you bring to the baby a head taller. So anyway, I'm saying all that because I'm imagining your wife growing up, watching her parents interact with different levels of people and learning a performance that is like, well, that's what you just do.
Right. Yeah.
Whereas where I've come from, and again, generation after generation, we had to sort of kowtow to. We weren't allowed to have nice things. You
Yeah.
weren't allowed to whatever. And sometimes that affects me with, my relationship with my girlfriend now. Like it's sometimes we'll have this moment where she's like, no, we just bought some new furniture for the new house. And it's like something is messed up. And I'm kind of like, well, it's okay. And she's like, it's not. And it's a different, sometimes I remember like, oh yeah, I now have the right to say it's not okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's still some times where I feel like, I'm not going to bring the conflict. I'm not going to be seen as the angry black man, right? So I just accept it, but it's not okay.
Yeah.
So
yeah, we'll work through. But if you've been handed books with 3 pages missing, your whole life, and saying, then after a while you just get used to them. You get used to the books with 3 pages missing. Those are your books, and the other ones are not for you to touch. Let's talk a little bit about this op-ed that you wrote for Dallas Morning News. I think it was around June 20th, close to Father's Day. You talked about your dad in the op-ed, and you said, my dad and I never had the talk, and you put quotes around it. You said, we had the awkward conversation about the birds and the bees, but we never had the black father-son talk about being black in America. So what would your father say to his son if he was raising a child, in Dallas or in Bed-Stuy in 2020? What would your dad say now?
my dad still is the kind of man that doesn't want to be, I think he's proud of his son today, but but doesn't he wants to just live his life and kind of just like, in some ways when I take the nuggets of advice he's ever given me, it was more always just get a good job, live a good life, and that's all you need to do. Like you don't need no more, right? Like he doesn't want for anything else. He's like, I go to work, I come home, and that's my life is. I don't get into politics. I don't get into this, and I can't say it's not like, I can't say it's bad advice, because if I really think about it, he's just like, I just want you to be safe, and whatever safe is, again, we point to police community issues, and that's an issue. We do need to address that. Some people think I was blaming police. I'm like, I'm not blaming police. Like I work with police. Some of my programs are to build the relationships, and it's been an ongoing issue for decades, centuries, and he didn't want me to be a part of that system, like his greatest, I think I don't know, I'll put it in his line was, look, if you get arrested, don't call me. I'm not bailing you out.
Yeah.
Point blank. Right. So more, he was just keep your head down, go to school, get a good job, go home, love your wife. And that's it,
Yeah. I was fascinated by your story. I mean, I read that paragraph 3 times because it reminded me of my own relationship with my father, where it was like, it was get your education, right? Get your education so that you have, some control over your future. Nobody can take that away from you. Get your education. That was it. We just books, man. And that was what he believed was kind of the way out and around and through, was just get your education. And I think he was partly right. I think he was right, almost all right. But, I think even now, as we're now older, all older, and we're looking back, he never had to talk with me either. I don't know why he didn't have the talk with me, but
I was going to,
Now,
I was going to ask you because I'm going to make an assumption that we also have two different sort of Black experiences. Your family being from Africa, because and this is something that the Black community born in America, we have our own issues internally, and we've had our own stereotypes and, if you will, negative assumptions around Africans, right? And
right.
so I'm wondering also just what the different experience probably for your family was, because you're dealing with not only just what people can see
Yeah.
as a Black man, but then you're dealing with you're African and all the
Right.
stereotypes of what we thought of Ethiopia.
Yeah, yeah, I heard all the jokes about Ethiopians, and this is, of course, when we got here was right after the time we were experiencing right before our country experienced a huge drought and famine, and Michael Jackson was singing "We Are the World," and had everybody up on. I'll never forget that dais or the stage or the choral kind of set up. He had all those famous people singing that video. I mean, it was playing all the time. We are the world. We are the children. And Ethiopian kids' bellies were extended,
Right.
yeah. So that was the caricature, of Ethiopia that almost everybody assumed was reality. But yeah, I mean, we were. Being an immigrant here is its own kind of experience, not just in the way that you relate to other people, but just what it in an immigrant family's home. It's different because, especially if you don't have your citizenship yet. If you don't have your citizenship yet, and you're moving and you're on a temporary green card, and then you get your green card, and then you're trying to get your passport. You don't make trouble, right? You just don't. There's no reason to go looking for it, no reason to invite it into your home, because you're here at the mercy and the goodwill of the U.S. government, and immigrants that are, before you get that citizenship, I mean, it can be taken away from you at any point. I mean, if you ask anyone who's gone through, immigration court, entirely different judicial system, right? Due process, forget about it. Right to fair representation, forget about it. I mean, and once they revoke your green card, you could be wrongly accused for something, and get sent up to Detroit immigration court. This has happened to a very close friend of mine from Sudan. And he ended up getting sent back to Sudan. His whole family was here, but he didn't have a citizenship yet. And one wrong turn, and he went back. So we don't invite any trouble. So what happens when you're just the windows are always drawn. You just always making sure that who you're associating with, and so that's a completely different experience as well. And then on top of that, being a Black American here, and basically what it's like, Antoine, is you just go to lunch and you don't know who to sit with, because it's like you're not Black enough to sit with the Black kids, and you're not white enough. You're in class with the white kids, but they don't really want you sitting at their lunch table. So we just, we sit around, all my young friends, Libya, Korea, Brazil, all the immigrants would just they'd congregate together at the lunch tables, little United Nations there,
Well, that's funny because back in Midwood, that's my two best friends. One was a Puerto Rican kid and an Asian kid. Like we were the three misfits in the class,
right?
So we banded together.
Yeah.
Everyone else was like,
right.
We don't know what to do with you guys.
Yeah. We'd be the immigrants, and then in high school was we would also be with what everybody else called the freaks. and we don't really know. In high school, we didn't know why we're calling them. And that label was just applied to everybody who did not fit into whatever normal high school kids in South Carolina were supposed to look like. So yeah, it was the freaks and the immigrants. We'd all be sitting together. So it was fun. We had a good time. I wouldn't trade it, man, for anything. It was.
They make you who you are, though.
They are. So yeah. You got any questions for me?
Yeah, I mean, you have children.
Mm-hmm.
So you have biracial children. So
Yes.
Again, when we talk about this talk, and again, for those who didn't read it yet, I wrote that piece. So let me just go back. The first piece I wrote about the knee, obviously, was around George Floyd, and I totally, I'll be honest. Sometimes the world is so painful, you don't want to watch it, right? So the week it happened, I had just missed the Central Park story where the woman called the police on the gentleman in Central Park.
Yeah.
Friends are sending me on Instagram, did you see this? I'm like, so I was like, I'm gonna cut the news off this week because I just wanted to relax. Saturday, I didn't even know what happened. I'll be honest. So I only turned on the TV Saturday because I remember we were sending two men into space again. And I was like, let me see this. This might be historic. And CNN was only talking about, after they launched, was talking about all these reports. It's like, what happened?
What happened? Yeah.
And the protest ended in front of my balcony. Well, the tear gas and kids running and so forth. And it moved me to tears. It moved me to then just express, I guess, what had been bottled up in me for years. So that's when I wrote the first one, because I always talk about anger. And right now, the Black community, the country, we've been a bottled up anger, and it's exploding. And the problem with anger is really, when you don't know how to direct it, it becomes destructive.
Yeah.
And I've experienced that in my life where I'm just angry. I was angry. I didn't know I was angry about being poor. Kind of what you said, it was life.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you realize you could not have certain things.
Yeah.
So it made you angry. It made me angry first day of school. And, capitalism says, back to school book bags and back to school clothes. And your mama's like, you ain't getting no new clothes. What happened to those sneakers I bought you over the summer? And you're like, but mom, I just messed up the summer sneakers.
Yeah.
Well, that's what you're going back to school.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody looking fresh, and I got, no frills sneakers by.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what that was. And then the second one, to get to my question, was again just bottled up feelings about, I talked to my son. Like, actually, my son called me, and I had this weird thought that in the back of my mind, I'm doing good work. I'm doing God's work. I will pay for the sins for my son. He does not have to deal with racism and things like that. I brought him around everybody in the All-Stars. It was built by whites, Jews, gays, Republicans, Democrats, Blacks, Christians, Catholics, this, that, whatever. And I'm like, this is what my son knows. So he ain't got to worry about what I dealt with. And he calls me and is like, Dad, I don't feel safe. And I was like, I have no words. What do I tell my son? He still lives in New York. He's 22. What did I tell him? Like, he doesn't feel safe. I don't want him to hate police. I never want him to do that. Right. I don't want him to hate white people. He saying, like, my mentor, Joe, was a senior VP at Merrill Lynch, like the most caring white person in the world I never knew. And this is, we love Joe. And I'm like, I don't want him to think of Joe as this white guy.
Yeah.
Because he's not this white guy.
Right.
So we started having that conversation, and then my daughter, she graduated from middle school, and I was like, hey, how are you dealing with this COVID thing? You got to graduate on Zoom, and You know, she's 14 years old, and she's like, I don't want to turn the TV on because what it feels like right now is it reminds me that I may not be able to come home one day to my family.
Mm.
So I guess my question is to you, you know, like with biracial kids, is it the same?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the same. And, you know, somebody, the question just came in related to this. And the question was, you know, is it possible that the talk or the chat that only serves to reinforce the message that a young Black is somehow dangerous, a threat, has limited freedom in the community, must be afraid of the police, etc.? Yeah, I mean, it's possible, but I'm at the same time, my son asked me a question, you know, about whether this is something that he should, you know, pay attention to. Is it possible, you know, that I might be judged by the color of my skin without somebody knowing me? Absolutely. Can that happen by can the police or someone, any person in law enforcement, really any person in a position of authority, would they actually do that as well? Somebody that be like, yeah, it is, yes, it's possible. So,
yeah, I was answer that too. Like, you know, that's also part of why I think I didn't want to have to talk.
right.
Because I did, you know, you don't want to be, what they say that, you know, you don't want to talk it into existence, right? I didn't want my son to have those thoughts. And because I don't want to be that causation directly, but I think part of not having to talk, there's a naivete that my son has about the world, right? There's things that he does that worry me more than it worries him. Like his mother will call me and be like, "Where is he at?" He gets off work. So my son got his dream job. He works at the Nike store on Fifth Avenue in New York City.
Ooh.
I know. So, you know, sometimes I'm like, now we got to talk finances because look,
Right.
you know, you can't spend all your money on Nike gear. Like, just come on.
Yeah.
That's another conversation. But he lives in Brooklyn. So let's say 5 miles, you know, 5-6 miles from the store. He will walk home at 8 o'clock at night with his headphones on, you know, so he got the Beat headphones and he wears nice clothes and stuff like that, you know, what fashionable clothes I would say. And he just walks aimlessly, walking down Fifth Avenue, walking across the bridge, down neighborhoods. And she will call me and be like, can you tell him stop doing that?
Yeah.
You know, takes him 2.5 hours, maybe more to get home, whatever. And he's kind of like, what's the deal? I'm just walking home. And in some ways, I just want him to be like, yeah, he's just walking home. But there's so many things going on. One, just the fashion. Two, the headphones, $300 headphones.
Mm-hmm.
And in three, you're walking in neighborhoods where sometimes people view you and go, why are you here?
Mm-hmm.
And all that's happening at the same time. And I'm like, I don't want to put that on him, but it's still the reality of today.
Yeah.
You know, that certain neighborhoods in Dallas I drive in, you know, I was actually visiting a friend in Highland Park and got pulled over. Mm-hmm. And the officer was like, what are you doing here? Now, mm-hmm. It didn't go drastic because I've now learned a performance mm-hmm. of how to talk to police. They're my friends.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, mm-hmm. What's up, man? Mm-hmm. He's like, the first question he asked was like, hey, where you going?
Yeah.
And the reason he pulled me over because my tail light was out.
Right.
One of my brake lights, actually.
Yeah.
But it's interesting direct that, you know, say, hey, let me just let you know your brake light is out. Oh, not a thank you. It was, hey, where you going?
Uh-huh.
I want to see a friend 2 blocks down. Okay. Let me see your ID. I'm like, cool. And I made you know, saying, we just talking, made a joke. How's your day? Whatever. And after I was like, all right, cool. The brake light's out. Make sure you get that fixed. You know, saying, cool. it was a simple conversation, but at the same time, it's like,
But you knew what you were doing. I mean, there's a performance to that.
yeah, you know, and
Mm.
this is not my neighborhood,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and my car doesn't reflect this neighborhood.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things that goes on in my head, like, okay, what's about to go down?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, there's it's not something I don't relish having those kinds of conversations with my kids, you know. That's not something I look forward to in the least bit. And I don't think any parent would, you know, want to reveal parts of this world, you know, and the evil that's in it. At when you don't know if like your child, have they developed enough to absorb this
right,
truth that I'm about to tell them. And then you're also wondering, can I afford to wait any longer?
right.
But that's part of parenting right now in 2020.
Right.
Um,
I don't have this conversation with the young people in the program. Again, what we focus on there is, you know, I don't know if I directly answered the other question that, you know, the adults learn whatever.
yeah,
We focus on bringing the young people in environments that they're not used to.
right.
We invite our supporters to come to talent shows in neighborhoods they're not used to. We invite them to have their own conversations that help them both
Mm-hmm.
see and move forward and build. You know, because what I like to focus on, and again, what I like to focus on my children is, I don't want to focus on the differences and the negativities. I'm trying to build relationships with hundreds and thousands of people so that the next time an officer does see a young person,
Yeah,
they see a young person like me or with a family. I see, you know, I always talk about one of my staff members, her husband is a Dallas police officer, and they just had a baby. He's 1 year old, baby bear, we call him. She sends around this video of her husband playing the guitar and the baby playing on his baby drums. It's one of the cutest videos I've seen all year, right? It's like, that's who I see him as.
yeah,
And it does hurt me that I know when he goes out and knock on doors. So every year, you know, not this year, we didn't do it, but we would do an event from First Pres called Community Action Day. 100 volunteers come out. We go into 5 different neighborhoods and we knock on doors and build whatever. And the police officers are with us and he's with us. And I'm like, they see him in uniform and it's kind of like that white cop. But I see the guy playing the guitar with his son.
right. Yeah,
That's what we're trying to do.
yeah,
That's what I focus on the most in my life and try to do with the young people is, so I just see a father. I just see a father.
yeah.
You know,
Yeah. There's much that binds us together, and it's like if we can just start these relationships and in their most fundamentally, like in the most fundamental and basic place, which is everybody's got to eat. That's what I tell myself. Everybody's got to eat. We all have to eat. That holds us and it holds us in company with each other. I don't know anybody that can make it without nutrition, without food. Everybody's got to eat. So
right.
we can start there, which is really just meeting at our most base and animalistic place, which is just eating something. And no matter who you are, where you've been, which building you're in, downtown, or if you're in Oak Cliff or somewhere else, or if you're a police officer, pastor, or running All Stars, we all got to eat. So, and that just means it's seeing each other as human beings and seeing what we can do with that. Once we start doing that, I think all the other systemic issues that we've got, they won't go away, but we'll at least have a critical mass of people that are willing to, you know, engage those issues and bring the structures down so that we can build new things. So, okay. I think, look here at the chat and make sure we don't have any other questions. All right. Antoine, anything else you want to share with us tonight?
Wow. I mean, we said this earlier, the time will go by so fast.
It will. Yeah.
I mean, it's probably so much to share. Again, I just want, I thank you. I thank everyone on this call, who welcomed us when we, with your predecessor, Pastor Joe Clifford. And, we had a great time, living in First Pres. It, it, again, I think it was the best place for us to be born, if you will, because I never felt like we were doing different work. I never felt unwelcomed. Everyone there welcomed us.
Yeah.
They welcomed the young people, and the programs that you all run I was like, okay, this is the model in which I see the city, right? It's a place of faith, but you also never felt like it was forced down your throat, what I'm saying? Which some other faith places, sometimes you're like, okay, look, people always say to me, like, who's the kids you're working with? I'm like, I'm working with all the kids. So not all the kids, are faith believers. Not all the kids are drug dealers. Not all the kids are smart. Not all the kids are dumb. Not all the kids are poor. Like, it's a mishmash, and you need a place where everyone is welcome.
Right.
And you all did that for us. So I just want to say thank you, and we'll keep fighting together. And again, we talked about it. Hope we can do some more work together, and hope everyone's safe during this time.
Well, we'll keep the light on for you, and the door, it will be propped open anytime that you need assistance, or you need help, or you want to make an invitation, say, for us to come alongside you as well. You've got friends here, and we're grateful for your time tonight. Let's pray, and then we'll get going. God of grace and goodness, thank you for setting aside this time for us to come together as dreamers. May we take the reflections that we have heard and we've shared tonight, and in all of their, in the fullness of the truth that was within those reflections, may we be transformed and changed in some way. We don't necessarily need that to happen tonight, but might happen tomorrow. It might take a few more conversations, God, for us to see or experience change. But Lord, we remain open to it. Fix us up so we'll be prepared to keep on walking behind Jesus with our own crosses. In his name we pray. Amen. All right. Good night. See everybody later. Bye-bye.
Thank you.